Well, they finally did it. The Greens have taken another scalp, and it is perhaps one of the biggest ones. Dodge has announced that the Charger and the Challenger will be discontinued after the 2023 model years. The Charger and the Challenger were pretty much the last gasp of the idea of the American muscle car. You know, they didn't try to have high fuel efficiency or be green or woke or anything. They were just about high horsepower, and they sounded cool, and were supposed to be fun to drive. But this is something that this very concept is demonized culturally. It's demonized economically. The banks don't want to invest in it. The EPA hates it. They want them to put them out of business. They've been having to buy credits from Tesla for years just to keep their heads above water. And finally, it seems like the corporate heads, the latest parent company, which has acquired Dodge, has decided enough is enough, and they're going to put the Dodge brand really out of its misery. Because without the Charger and the Challenger, Dodge doesn't really have anything. They don't sell much of anything else. The trucks, which are also very meaty and full of testosterone and not fuel efficient, were spun off, 10 years ago. So Dodge doesn't have that in its brand anymore. I mean, the Chrysler brand is pretty much gone. They have, a minivan left in the Chrysler 300. And if they're discontinuing the Charger, which the 300 and the Charger used to be the same car, I'm sure the 300 is on its way out too. So pretty much Chrysler and Dodge gone. Sacrificed at the Great Green Altar. All in the pursuit of the Great Green Grift. But it's only natural, it's to me, it's more surprising that a corporate entity was able to keep a symbol of toxic masculinity and just, good old American, Americanism or Americana, whatever you want to call it, in production for as long as they have. The Dodge Challenger really spits in the face of everything that corporate America stands for the most part, other than, it's not like it's the most user-friendly thing in the world to work on. It's not like an original Dodge Challenger from the 70s that, just like any car back then, the end user could maintain and fix themselves. I don't think you'll be doing that for the most part, but but at the end of the day, people, even though it's more technical these days, there are still people who work on newer cars like that. There's plenty of guys who, install performance parts and things like that, or at least do their own exhausts. It was one of the last vehicles that you could buy and really make your own and take pride in that sense that, you could understand everything that went into it. And that, of course, is just something that corporate investors and the global, Western economy is not interested in these days for any product. They don't want you to be able to buy something and really get a durable good. They want you to consume. They want you to buy things that are, meant to be either thrown away or things that you have to rent. Anything durable, you have to rent. I think that a big part of this electric car movement is the consumability of the batteries. And I've talked about this time and time again, how the batteries, they're not recyclable. You can't recondition them. There's very little that can be extracted, even if you expend a tremendous amount of energy in incinerating these batteries. You can extract some of the smaller quantity elements out of them, but of course you can't get the lithium back. And so when you buy an electric car, which again, gas cars have been like this now for many decades too. You buy it and you consume it. It's something that, it's got an expiration date stamped on it. Even if cars these days have internal combustion engines, they're not the durable goods that they once were, even though they go longer now, perhaps, before they have their first problems. Once they have problems, it's not the kind of thing you can fix. An old car that was simple, if it had an issue, you could fix it yourself. And eventually, if it got really worn down and the engine was wore out, you could either rebuild it yourself, which many people do, or have it rebuilt. And theoretically, you could keep it around forever. I mean, we see this in Cuba. Cuba, they have cars from the 1950s, made in America, that are still on the road, that they still drive. Because of the embargo, they couldn't get new cars. They could only buy, Russian cars, which I can understand why you might want a 57 Chevy over a Lada. But what I mean is those were durable goods. It's evidence of that. Even these modern Dodge Challengers, which I think are, among some of the more respectable cars that have been put out over the last 20 years, there will be none of these Challengers on the road in 60 or 70 years. There might be some, that were preserved or whatever, but none that were just kept in constant working order. But, this story is really, it hardens my resolve in my wish to see the entire Western system turned upside down and destroyed. Because this is the direction that our elites are taking us. This is very much a part of the concept of you will own nothing and you will be happy. That second part very much up for debate, but the first part at this stage is not really up for debate. Because electric cars will be so expensive, 1, to manufacture, 2, to maintain, and 3, to fuel in the form of electricity, that the vast majority of people will not own them. You will take a self-driving Uber to work or to the grocery store. You won't own the car. Our electric grid here is not capable of supplying that much electricity. We all know that. The elites know it. The politicians know it. If you ask them, they will tell you. The plan isn't for everyone in America to buy an electric car. The plan is for there to only be electric cars on the road, and whoever can get a hold of one will get a hold of one. And whoever can afford to maintain them will maintain them. And whoever can afford the electricity, or who has access to the electricity, because there will inevitably be planned blackouts. We already see this in California, and California doesn't even have that many electric cars yet. The market doesn't work in such mysterious ways. If electric cars were feasible economically, they would be much more prevalent than they are today. Even the very small amount of market share that electric cars have today has only been made possible through tremendous subsidies and relentless pushing from the elites. All resources are scarce. The materials that we use to make batteries, even though they've gotten much better over the years, and batteries are better now than they've ever been, although they're not really green. They're not as green as they used to be. They're much more dirty and bad for the planet. An old-timey lead-acid battery was recyclable. You can recondition them. They really are just like an internal combustion engine that I talk about, how it's made from simple elements, and you can melt down a car and rebuild it, from its basic elements over and over again. You could do the same, for the most part, with an old-timey lead-acid battery. You can't do that with these modern batteries. But even setting the battery issue aside, electricity itself, even if you had a cord running to every single one of these electric cars, electricity is a scarce resource. We use it to power many, many things, but we don't use it to power our vehicles for the most part. Why do you think that is? It's because gasoline and diesel fuel, and even propane, are more economical fuels for powering a vehicle. The market allocates scarce resources towards their most highly valued ends. Electricity is scarce, and the reason why we use electricity for all these things that are not powering our transportation is because electricity is more highly valued by us to power air conditioning, refrigeration, lights. And once we do all that, there's not enough left over to power cars, because we have other fuels that can do that more efficiently. They can do it cheaper. People talk about how, oh, well, the subsidized rate or whatever from the electric company, it's cheaper for me than gasoline. It might be right now when nobody has an electric car. Tell me that your electricity is cheaper than gasoline once everybody has an electric car, which is what we're being led to believe is going to happen. I already told you that's not going to happen. It's not feasible. But if it were to happen, electricity prices would necessarily skyrocket, and gasoline prices would necessarily plummet. That's the way markets work. Because nobody would have any demand for gasoline, so all the gas stations would just, they would make it all, 1 cent a gallon. It'd be worthless. The refineries would all shut down. And then people would go, you know what? Gas is so cheap. Why don't we build a car that runs on gas? And then we'd be able to get to work a lot cheaper. And then you'd get back to where people were when we started this whole charade. And I guarantee you, we will when the West collapses. Just like Eastern communism was unsustainable during the Cold War, just like the end of the Soviet Union was inevitable, so too is neoliberalism. It's not just the green ideology. It's everything else they believe. These people are insane. They're out of touch. They are drunk on the power of the 1990s. They think that every year is just a repeat of 1992, and that, they can do whatever they want. They have unlimited resources. And it's just simply not the case. Scarcity exists. When the Soviets tried to incorrectly allocate scarce resources to something other than their most highly valued ends as determined by the market, the Soviets were punished. They were punished with mass poverty. And that's under the best case scenario. That's when the system is still able to operate. You get poverty, but you can still sort of scrape by. Eventually, things will get so bad that instead of just everyone being poor, the entire system breaks down, and there is no more, economic cooperation. And that's why I hope this next recession is as deep and destructive to the financial system as possible, because we need to wipe these people out. They're a menace to the human race. And I don't mean wipe them out physically. I'm not talking about killing people. I mean wipe them out financially. Take away their economic power. They need to lose because they're making very, very bad decisions. And I hope they get wiped out, by the popping of an asset bubble before they have a chance to structurally completely turn the Western economy upside down. Because things, even though they're not perfect, they generally work in the West. Things have never been perfect in the West, but things always mostly worked. The government acted as a drag on the economy, but not so much so that the market couldn't function. The corporate ideology of everything needing to be a subscription service, everything being a consumable, and wedded with the green grift, is apocalyptic for Western society. The West is marching off a cliff. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.